Welcome to Recently Logged, where this week we go international. Ooh. Yeah, so welcome back.
Welcome back, everyone. Here we are.
It's been pretty much a month almost since we've recorded.
I was surprised. When I looked at our last episode, I was like, I wonder when that came out. But it said 3 weeks. I'm like, 3 weeks? What?
Yeah.
It's flown by.
Crazy.
Yeah.
For sure. And in that time, I have left the United States of America.
You make it sound so shady or something.
I've fled the country.
I think it would be flown the country, technically.
It would not be
fleed?
flown.
I don't know the past tense of flee. Fled the country. I mean, technically, you have flown the country on a plane.
I've flown over the country.
You've flown over the country. He's currently in the air right now, actually.
Yeah, for sure.
He's just levitating. I'm on Discord with him right now. He's just floating like above his desk.
I have a microphone, my computer, they're all up here floating with me.
Yeah, it's pretty cool actually. I'm very impressed. Yeah, I don't know why you didn't pull this out while you were recording like in the US, you know?
Yeah, this would have probably gotten me like millions of subscribers on my channel if I had just shown them my process, but
yeah.
But no, I'm currently in Belgium. I am studying studying abroad for like 4 months. I will still be here 4.5 months at this point. So I'm gonna try, or at least we're gonna try, I should say, the collaborative to record whenever we can, I guess.
Yeah,
but my schedule
as
is
frequently as we can. Yeah.
My schedule is obviously pretty tight.
Yeah, I'm still, I'm completely free, at the moment.
To kind of get us back into the flow of things, we're gonna just do a what we watched episode.
Yes, this is going to be our first remotely recorded episode, so I apologize if we end up talking over each other more often than we usually do. Yeah,
the delay, especially being this far away, like, because Belgium is even further away than the UK, which we've occasionally had Luke on from the UK.
I was about to say this is a whole 6-hour delay right now. That's crazy. I have to wait 6 hours to hear what you're saying. I'm just kind of improvising this as I go along.
It's pretty impressive.
It's actually it's very impressive actually. I have great improv intuition. So.
But yeah, I suppose let's get right into it.
Yeah, let's get into it. All right, so we're going to be going over everything we've watched over the past period since we last released an episode. So every movie we've logged in our diary, we're going to give a short little review or a long little review, I guess, if we want to.
Well, we'll see.
This will be our first What We Watched episode of season 6 and our first episode of season 6 in general.
Yeah.
So
2024.
Exciting. Let's go.
So yeah, we're going from, I think, the 10th of January forward.
January 10th onward, baby.
Which I was still there, so these first several movies, I believe we watched mostly together.
Yeah, I was about to say, that little stretch right before you left, we watched a bunch of stuff, together. So.
Yeah. All right, so kicking us off on the 10th, we have Asteroid City.
Yeah. This is my first rewatch of the movie, since theaters.
Oh, I was like, this is my first rewatch of the year. I don't know what you mean by that. But yeah, man, Asteroid City is such a good movie. It really hit this time around too. I really loved this in theaters, and I was really worried that it was the theater experience that I loved, and then it just wouldn't be as good at home. But it was still great.
That's interesting because I actually wasn't as into it when I saw it in the theater. I was kind of hung up on trying to keep up with a lot of its framing devices and everything. So I feel like I got kind of a little lost in the noise of it a little bit. On the home viewing, I was able to kind of, I think, tune into it more emotionally which made it a lot more of a rewarding watch than like my theater one. So
yeah, that
I
makes
liked
sense.
it a lot. Yeah, it was great.
Robbie, you're not following the message of the movie, which, or like part of the message of the movie, which is to not understand, but just feel.
I know. I was like, it's so silly that that was my like kind of thing. But when I watched it in the theater, I was like, I didn't really like I was spent so much time trying to keep up with it that I didn't take the time to feel it out like as I was watching it. But like the way it touches on grief is still really profound. I feel like that's mostly what the movie is about, as much as it is about like isolation and like limited social circles and everything.
Yeah, but it's kind of like the way that grief affects, like, puts you into isolation and stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah, and I honestly, on the second viewing, it's probably like I don't know if I would say my favorite Wes Anderson movie, but close. Fantastic Mr. Fox and Grand Budapest are really hard to top. But
I was about to say, with those two existing, that's so hard. But yeah, no, this is easily one of my favorites from Wes Anderson. When I watched this in theaters, I felt like I like ascended. I was crying in the theater. I loved it. I didn't actually get as emotionally, like I wasn't like crying or anything on the second watch, but I still was just like, by the time it hits around into the third act, which is actually what I've heard most people have complaints about, is the third act. I know some people have some issues with the fact that you spend so much time with these characters, like the play characters, and then don't get to see their conclusion.
Interesting.
But that's not really an issue for me. But around
I was about to say, I never would have thought of that as like being an issue. That's yeah,
but you do never really see the resolution of like the Asteroid City conflict.
Yeah, that is very true. But I think Asteroid City still a big like 2 thumbs up from me.
For sure.
I actually, I rated it a whole star higher as opposed to my like first viewing. So I gave it a full 5 out of 5 this time.
I also gave it a 5 out of 5. I love Asteroid City. Easily one of my favorites from West. One of the ones that I've actually gotten like emotionally into.
Yeah, you and I need that like moment for Moonrise Kingdom for me. I need that to happen.
Well, that was a very timely thing too. I'm not sure I'd get as emotionally into it now, but like back when I did first watch it, it was very much like a great movie for me to watch then.
Yeah. Well, the next thing that we watched, I think together, was The Aviator on the 12th.
Yeah, on the 12th.
Which I think we've talked about it a couple times now, if you're like keeping up with the podcast at all.
Yeah, it's funny. This is also one of my favorites. Like, it's been in my top 4 before. It's easily probably my favorite Scorsese movie.
It sounds so crazy to me when you say that, because like it's Martin Scorsese. He's like one of the best directors of all time, probably. And you're like, yeah, it's The Aviator. You know, the Howard Hughes biopic. That's my favorite.
But come on, no other movie I've watched affects me like this one does. It's genuinely unpleasant, but it's so great.
That's the thing about The Aviator, and I've seen it like 3 or 4 times now, and it's such a deeply unpleasant movie for me to watch that like I think the first 2 times I watched it, I'm like, I don't want to watch that again.
See, it's such a deeply unpleasant movie. I finished watching it and I was like in awe, and I was like, I have to watch that again.
Yeah, that's the thing, because like I've had a hard time analyzing it because of just how like deeply it gets under my skin. Like I'm like, is this just me being like weird, or is this like the movie being really good? And I think I finally settled on it being like a really good movie and like a really technically sharp movie.
No, I mean, beyond it getting really into my head in terms of a lot of like its little tricks and like uses of lighting and editing and everything to make such a viscerally uncomfortable experience for me, I get super emotionally invested into what the film is doing, and I think it has a great message about capitalism and the way society like kind of overlooks and pushes past the actual health problems of people for just progress. Progress above anything, really.
Yeah, no, it's so interesting, and especially on this last viewing, I got a lot more emotionally invested, especially around the like third act. Like the big like finale of the movie. I was like, wow, like this this is really impressive. Like I don't know how the emotional scale of everything didn't hit me before, but like everything quarantine onward, this watch was like amazing. I was like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, all of the courtroom stuff, I love. I love, like, I don't know how, like, the way they edit it along with the Flight of the Hercules makes it not only, condenses the story in a way that it needed, but they tie the two emotional, like, breakthroughs together with that.
Right?
It's so good.
Yeah, no, it's really impressive. But yeah, the Aviator, obvious approval from both of us, especially Micah.
Yeah, one of my favorites. Of course, I gave it a 5 out of 5.
I also gave it a 5 out of 5. I had been very hesitant in watches prior, but I think it definitely earned it this time. I adore it. But speaking of courtroom, Micah.
Up next, later that day, we watched Ace Attorney, the 2012 adaptation of the video game.
We followed up
crazy.
A Martin Scorsese movie with a video game adaptation.
Which, to be fair, like you leave The Aviator like emotionally and like physically drained. So having something as lighthearted as Ace Attorney is not a bad thing.
Yeah, anyone familiar with the like ethos of Ace Attorney can probably guess what like a very accurate film adaptation would be like.
It's so wild.
It's very silly and very funny, and I don't know why. I don't know what the makeup and costuming department was on, but they kind of nailed everything here.
They did, dude. Yeah, the characters all look like it doesn't just feel like, oh, look, they look game accurate. It like feels like a good adaptation of their game look to film.
Yeah, it's so weird. The whole movie's so weird. Like as a project.
I can't believe it exists. The director, I could pull this up. I think it's Mike.
Who did? Yeah, I know the director. I don't think I've seen anything else by them before, though.
Yeah, because he's Takashi Mike. That's what it is, or it's probably Mike. I always think Mike because that makes me remember his name. But yeah, so the guy who directed Audition and Ichi the Killer and 13 Assassins. He did this movie, which makes me laugh so much.
Yeah, the fact that the Audition guy made Ace Attorney and like it's an incredibly game accurate adaptation with like a very silly and campy tone. Like it's
I will say with that, my biggest complaint with the movie, I think on the whole, like it nails the characters in a really fun way, but at the same time, it's taking like an entire pretty long game story and condensing it into a pretty short movie. I mean, it's like a 2-hour movie, but a lot of the characters and like their arcs feel very flat. I don't really like know a lot of these characters as much as I would like to, or get to see like Phoenix and everything like that, like have these really interesting bromances going on. So that like it's kind of disappointing. It feels like, oh man, we just got to get through this court case and then this court case, and you spend the entire legwork of the film just on getting through plot because there's so much there.
Yeah, that really is. It seems like the biggest criticism I've heard of it, and my biggest problem with it too, is that there's just so much that they have to get through for the movie to happen. Is that you don't really get to sit with anything for all that long, and it's not like substantial enough on its own to be like, wow, I feel like that was such a rewarding experience. It's more like I finished the movie and I'm like, wow, that was fun, and then I move on.
Yeah, it didn't really stick with me at all.
Yeah. Outside of like the fun like stylistic stuff and like the makeup and costuming being fun, and like there's good performances and stuff too, like it's a fine movie by all accounts. I just don't think it quite reaches the heights that it could potentially as maybe a video game.
Yeah, maybe something that could spend more time with it and get you invested personally into each mystery. I don't know, something like that.
Something like that. I don't know.
But I gave it a 3 out of 5. I still really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I didn't rate it because of my whole like rating cutoff thing that I've been doing this year. I would probably give it a 3 out of 5. Yeah, if I was rating it, it was good.
Well, speaking of cutoffs, Ravi.
Oh no! Oh no! That's a fun segue.
It's a fun segue. Yeah. Speaking of cutting things down, what did we watch next?
We watched Ghost Dog: The Way of the Samurai on January 15th.
No. Oh,
no,
wait, that wasn't what my segue was for. That works too. I thought you watched the Lorax with us.
Oh,
you
no!
Didn't. Oh, I thought you watched the Lorax with us. We're not looking at each other's lists right now. We probably should be.
We're going blind right now.
But yeah, so Ghost Dog is not next. That would work though.
That's why I was like, that's devastating, Micah. How could you?
But no, it was about cutting trees.
That's so funny. Yeah, no, I like popped out. I think like 20 minutes into the Lorax. I had other stuff I had to do.
Yeah. All right, well, I have 2 movies before Ghost Dog, so hold your horses, audience.
I'm holding.
On the 13th, I watched The Lorax. It's dumb as rocks. It's, by all accounts, pretty bad, and beyond, like, meme efforts, it's, like, kind of depressing, too, because they kind of stripped it of any of its teeth and made it this weird, I don't know, illumination thing. The performances are weird, the animation is downright ugly, but you can't help but have a good time with it, I think.
It's such a, like, if I can comment on the 20 minutes I saw, I hadn't seen it since I was, like, a kid, like, when we rented it, I think.
Yeah.
So, like, seeing the first 20 minutes, I forgot how ugly the art direction is, first of all.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, the soundtrack is like frustratingly catchy, I think.
Right? It's
not even that good, really.
No, it's like the lyricism. I noticed that the lyricism is terrible. Terrible.
It's just awful.
But the songs are super catchy.
I think that's like a good thesis for like how the Lorax itself is, like the movie. Like,
yeah,
it's like,
honestly,
it's like kind of fun, but like it's also actively awful.
There's also just so much meme culture that's come out of it that makes it just an enjoyable watch. I gave it a 2 out of 5.
Has like distorted its legacy in a really fun way. Like I could honestly see going and like actually rewatching it,
right,
and having a little bit of fun with it. Yeah.
But then on the 14th, I went to the theater and watched Night Swim. Which I did not realize literally until today was a 2024 movie. So that's my first 2024 movie.
I had no idea it came out in 2024. What the heck?
Yeah, I thought that was crazy. The thing is about Night Swim is that it's really bad. It's just so bad. Like, and not in a fun way. I mean, me and Haley, I went and watched this with Haley in the theater. Yeah. We were having a blast, but we were trying to keep it in because we could not stop laughing at just how bad this movie is. I'm pretty sure people walked out of the theater at certain like dramatic reveals because it was so dumb.
That's crazy. I've never been in a horror movie where people have actually walked out.
Yeah, it was... It's like such a terrible concept, and I feel like everyone knew it was a terrible concept going into it, but the execution is way worse than you'd think. And it takes itself 1000% seriously. So you have like these lines where like these characters are getting like pulled into the pool, and a character will be like, "It's cool in the deep end," with like 100% sincerity, and it's supposed to be like a creepy moment, and it just doesn't work at all. Beyond the fact that the entire movie's horror is just like stuff almost happening. I think one character dies in the whole movie.
No way.
It's just like, oh, they're swimming in the pool. Something vaguely supernatural is happening. And then they get scared and leave.
Dude, that's crazy. I would not have like pegged Night Swim as a low body count horror movie. If anything, I would think they'd shoot for like... I mean, I guess how do you have like a high body count in a pool?
Yeah, because like you run into the paradox that if somebody dies in the pool, reasonably the family would probably leave.
Right.
So it's like restrained by its own framing device, which was a bad framing device to begin with. And it's
so
just bad.
funny.
It's so bad. But I had fun enough with it that I gave it a 2 out of 5 as well. It was just baffling.
Some trash bangers over here, apparently.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Then, Revy, what did we watch?
Then we watched Jim Jarmusch's Ghost Dog: The Way of the Samurai.
Jim Jarmusch, my man.
You're such a big Jarmusch head. Like, you've only seen a couple of his movies.
Yeah, I've seen 2 of his movies. I'm like, this is like everything I want in a director.
You know, it's really funny because when I am watching a Jim Jarmusch movie, which again, I've only seen 2 as well, I'm like, this seems like Micah's whole cinematic thesis. Like, every time you talk to me about wanting to make a movie, it seems like you want to make Ghost Dog: The Way of the Samurai or Patterson.
It's true. It's true. Ultimately, like, some of my favorite movies are like really like poppy and like Scorsese's work and stuff like that. But like the movies that I feel always like would be more similar to stuff that I would make are like Jim Jarmusch or Terrence Malick and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was about to say, because like on one hand it is really fun to like watch like a Casino or something like that, but in my mind I'm like, I could never make something like that.
Yeah.
This seems like less so with my like stylistic like tendencies, but like I get the appeal of a Jim Jarmusch kind of movie. You know, like it's a very literary script and a very like meditative and kind of smooth execution of everything.
Yeah, I love what this film is doing. I love how it takes its time and it ruminates on things, and its kind of general message about, you know, history and the honor code and culture and like the progress and essentially gentrification of things in a really interesting way. Ties into this goofy like samurai / mafia story.
It's so strange. Yeah, I keep forgetting about the mafia elements when that's like literally most of the movie.
Right? Like, it's a mob movie and I did not know that going into it. But like, with it being a mob movie and like for all intents and purposes being an action movie, it's still so mellow, which I love.
Yeah, no. If you would have told me Jim Jarmusch made like a mob movie, and it also features like bloody shootouts and like people getting sliced, I would be like, what? What are you talking about?
Also, lots of birds, which is epic.
Yeah, I was about to say I have like the Letterboxd page pulled up right now, and it's just Forrest Whitaker surrounded by pigeons. It's a great shot.
It's how every movie should be. Dude, there's like one of my favorite scenes of the movie is like he's outside of this big building where the mob is held up, and he's got a sniper and he's like scoping in on people and like is about to take a shot, and then just a bird lands on the I'm losing my terms.
The like barrel of the gun.
Yeah, the barrel of the rifle right in front of his scope. And he just looks at it. And then he's missed his opportunity to do the big shootout. And I was like, I don't know why, but I love that moment. It's like so peaceful and really nails in kind of Ghost Dog as a character really well.
Yeah. And like that sequence in general, there are like a bajillion standout sequences. Like any high tension sequence from Ghost Dog, I think, is honestly phenomenal. The way that movie manages its like atmosphere and tension while also being like a very like relaxed movie when it needs to be, or contemplative movie when it needs to be. It's very impressive to me.
No, and yeah, it's just such a joy to watch. I love the way it ends. I love what it has to say again about culture and media, and they make a bunch of Rashomon references to the actual like book, which is really
Rashomon
funny.
Mentioned.
And it's totally up my alley. Also, Forrest Whitaker's best performance easily.
Oh yeah, I this kind of did for me what Leon the Professional did for like Gary Oldman for me. You know, like I never really enjoyed much of their performances, and then I'm like, oh, they actually like are a good they're a good actor. Who knew?
Yeah, you gotta watch Bram Stoker's Dracula for Gary Oldman.
Dude, I'm pumped to watch that movie. I'm so excited. But yeah, Forrest Whitaker definitely vibed with his performance in this, and like basically everyone's performance in this. Like it's just it's a great ensemble, great movie, great script. I loved it.
I gave it a 4.5.
I gave it a 4 out of 5. It wasn't quite all the way there. It didn't like, especially in the finale, didn't hit me quite the way I wanted it to, but I think it is like great. It's a great movie.
But speaking of Bram Stoker's Dracula,
yeah.
Up next on the 16th of January, we have Nosferatu the Vampire.
Yeah.
The 79 version. I have not seen. I think the other one's just called Nosferatu.
Yeah, it's just called Nosferatu.
Anyway, the one directed by your boy Werner Herzog.
Is he my boy?
He's everyone's boy.
This is my first Herzog feature. I had seen a little documentary short he had made called How Much Wood Would a Woodchuck Chuck? And it's about like auctioneer announcers, like their lives.
Yeah.
It's very strange, but this is like my first, not only my first narrative, but my first feature that I've seen from Herzog.
But let's put it this way, Rebby. Let's put it this way. Werner Herzog is humanity's boy.
I can't argue with that. But like his documentarian like eye is like, I assume most of his movies are probably like this, but like the eye he has as a documentarian like really lends itself well to a really unique and, I don't know, kind of understated atmosphere in a lot of ways with how gothic and kind of crazy this movie can get. Like it still feels very like grimy and like real worldy. It's very
strange. Down to earth.
Yeah.
No, I absolutely adore his direction on this. Again, just like you mentioned, that very documentary style, especially in the way he decides to take the story in general. And I feel like it also leans to his writing style a lot, his adaptation, because for all intents and purposes, it's a rather faithful adaptation of Dracula, but it takes it in a completely different direction than most contemporary Dracula movies, and decides to highlight certain things and certain points of the subtext in a really unique way. And understated, I think, is a really great way to put it, because this entire thing, it's not like overtly horror scary, and it doesn't have any like sweeping romance to it per se, but it's just like this very bleak, almost dread-filled film from the very moment the credits start.
Yeah, and since neither of us have seen like the older Nosferatu movie, I one of my friends said this is like a surprisingly accurate like remake in a lot of ways, like of that movie. Like there's a lot of visual nods to it and everything. But from what I understand, it takes a like it puts the focus on different elements than that movie does. And I've never read Dracula. I feel like I need to now so I can understand what's going on.
You should read Dracula. It's so
because there's a shocking amount of Dracula lore that I did not know.
Yeah, which
like his dirt.
His dirt, yeah, he's got to have his coffins of dirt, Robbie, or he'll die.
I was unaware. How was I ignorant for so long?
I don't know. That's like a big, there's even like, do you remember that game? There's like a board game that has a bunch of different Universal monsters, and you have to kill all the monsters, and the way you kill Dracula is by destroying his coffins of dirt.
Okay, I thought that was like just a thing for that board game, though.
No.
I didn't realize, like, the only elements I was familiar with Dracula-wise was like Dracula, he lives in a castle, and there's a guy named Jonathan, and there's another guy named Renfield.
Wow.
And that's about it. And there's
Van
another
Helsing,
guy named Van
Lucy,
Helsing.
Mina. Anyway, this movie's great. I love what it's doing with all of its characters. It's such a unique Dracula in this. He really stands out, and I love like the makeup work and his character design. It's very unique.
Dude, it looks amazing. Like the whole movie does, but yeah, specifically the makeup and lighting and everything.
Yeah,
is phenomenal.
And the way they take Jonathan's character is really interesting because that's actually one of the least book accurate things they do. And they do something really interesting by the end with Jonathan's character, and I adore the ending of this movie because you have this bleak movie that ties it so directly into its themes about the plague, and you just have that scene at the end where like just everybody is dead and it's so bleak, and like Van Helsing's killed Dracula and Mina, and it's just everything is bad, everything is gone wrong, and it's amazing.
I honestly, yeah, I feel like I need to read the book because I was puzzled at the ending at first, but I feel like it does fit with the rest of the like, bleak tone of the rest of the movie. And like again, it's largely about or influenced by, the aftermath of the plague and like and what am I thinking of? The like current events during the plague. Like a lot of the hopelessness and like paranoia and just general fear.
That's kind of I mean, again, what Dracula more or less is based off of is that sense of like this killing force that would come in, and not just the plague either. One of the big influences of that, I'm losing all of my words. That big sickness that was in like all of Europe that made people
like
super
the Black
pale.
Plague?
No, not the plague.
Oh, the bubonic? Oh, wait, no. What wait.
I don't remember. Anyway.
Different disease.
Yeah, different disease, super common. It was like, it was so common that it became popular to have pale skin because that was viewed as like, that became a trope because so many people would get afflicted by this, and their skin would get super pale and they'd get super thin. And that's where like the aesthetics of Dracula come from.
I need to read up on my Dracula lore real quick, dude.
Again, that's like the whole
I don't know
sucking
why
blood.
I'm always so surprised at how much richness there is in like classical folk literature and like just classical literature in general. I'm like, what? They didn't know what that was back then. They were just writing stuff.
No, anyway, we've spent a long time on this. The moral of the story, I loved this movie and I gave it a 5 out of 5.
I really dug it. I think it kind of drags in a few spots, but that could just be my like weird misunderstanding of some of the elements of it, or just me not vibing with it as much. But there are some like really transcendent moments where the score, I didn't even mention the score. The score is amazing. The score is
so good. Tuberculosis, by the way.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Mike is Googling. But yeah, like there's some like really transcendent, just like pure cinematic moments, and like it's really well directed. The performances are great. It's a really like inspired production, I think. I thought it was great. I gave it a 4 out of 5.
Speaking of productions,
there's no way we can do this for all of them.
Segue every movie. Up next, I believe. Again, we're not looking at each other's lists. We watched. What did we watch, Remy?
We watched a little ditty called Chicago.
Yeah, on the 19th.
Yeah,
Chicago. Which, I mean, this movie won a bunch of Oscars. Everyone knows Chicago.
Everyone knows Chicago.
A lot of people do. But this is a weird movie. I really loved this movie, and I felt so embarrassed for loving it because it's a Rob Marshall movie.
Yeah, I was about to say, from the cinematic mind that brought you such films as The Little Mermaid 2023 and Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides.
Oof. I don't know how he did it. I don't know how he got a Bob Fosse musical done so well, but yet he's like, every other film hit by him is just like, dude, he did Mary Poppins Returns.
Dude, it's crazy because he did the Into the Woods like Disney adaptation, and it's the most juiceless musical, like movie musical of all time, with one of honestly probably my favorite musical.
Right, and it butchers the story of Into the Woods. It butchers the entire message.
It's really quite astounding how awful Into the Woods 2014 is. Especially when you watch Chicago. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like good. How? I've seen some complaints about its camera work and cinematography feeling kind of aimless and meaningless, and that they just didn't really know where to ever put the camera. I didn't really feel that way while watching it, but it is
I could see an argument for that. Like, it's not the most intentionally shot movie, but like it's poppy and it's like functional, you know, at least. Yeah. And it's like energetic enough that it's not taking away from any other element. You know?
Yeah, I was about to say, ultimately, the set design and lighting and costuming, I think, kind of make up for that, because I think it does a really great job of using its sets and its lighting and its costume. Like, this movie looks so good. The songs, of course, are amazing, and it's practically just like the same arrangements as like the original Fosse show.
Yeah, which this is my first time ever sitting down and listening to a Bob Fosse show, like, at all, ever. And I was like shocked at how like they didn't really modernize the arrangements of it at all. Like, it's still very much a cabaret kind of musical, like, and it sounds exactly like that.
Which adapting to a cabaret,
even the vocal
to
performances.
Film, so cool. I can't believe they adapted a cabaret to film like this. It's such a good idea.
Man, yeah, and like it's really interesting because like the meta narrative of it kind of functions in a really interesting way, because like a movie adaptation of Chicago makes sense because it's about the commodification of stuff, and like, yeah, you know, it's able to cut back to like the stage for its musical numbers and it doesn't feel out of place, which is really cool.
No, I think that's super sick. I loved the performances. I loved the musical numbers. I loved the movie. I got really emotionally invested. It's not perfect. I could totally see having problems with it. But yeah, for me, 4.5 out of 5.
Nice. Yeah, I do have like a couple of like just weird, like it's just weird in some spots, but like it's a fun enough time for me anyway that I would definitely give it a 4 out of 5. I think it's great.
Nice. What did you watch next?
After that, I watched Yee.
Okay, so yeah, I have 2 movies again that you did not watch. Okay. On the 20th, I watched Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. We had been showing somebody the Harry Potter movies, and this was the next one. And this is still, I think, probably one of the weaker entries of the whole series, but it's fun. I still enjoy what it's doing on an emotional level, and I really do think it pulls off some of its like darker elements pretty well, considering. But the plot is just so pulled thin that literally every single conflict in the entire movie, they'll be like, "Oh, blimey, Harry, I don't know how to solve this problem." And then somebody will walk in and be like, "Hey, Harry, here's the solution to the problem." And that's literally every scene of conflict in the entire movie.
Dude, that movie, I don't know what it is about it. Something about it just kind of makes me angry.
I don't know. I still have a decent amount of time with it, like good time with it.
Yeah.
But it's fine. I don't have too much to add. We did a whole episode on
the if you want to hear our thoughts about it, go listen to our episode on the Goblet of Fire.
Yeah, I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. Then on the 21st, I watched Ratatouille again. Again, we've done a whole episode on this pretty recently.
Yeah, it was, I think, one of the first episodes of season 5. So go check that out.
So go check that out. It also was like my favorite movie ever for a long time. So obviously I love it. It was still great to return to. I hadn't seen it in a while. I don't think I watched it at all in 2023. So watching it again was really nice. I gave it a 5 out of 5.
Very cool.
Then what did we watch, Remy?
Then after that, we sat down for a while and watched Edward Yang's Yee.
Yeah, my second Yang movie.
Yeah.
Very cool. I also really love what he's doing with these. This is a gorgeous film.
Oh my goodness, yes. They're like... I feel like A Brighter Summer Day was kind of like this, but since so much of this is interior locations instead of exterior, you get even more like lavish production design and like lighting. And I don't know, it is a phenomenal looking film. But really the thing that struck me about it, especially compared to A Brighter Summer Day, is how well he's able to like frame all of these moments so well, like in relation to each other. Like this one has even more of a sprawling like ensemble than A Brighter Summer Day has.
Yeah, for sure.
And it follows a bunch of different like main characters, and it somehow manages to weave all of their emotional arcs pretty flawlessly together.
Yeah, I mean, effectively it has
crazy.
like 3 main characters that it follows.
Yeah.
But to do, again, what you mentioned with all of this ensemble and all of these, but also be way less plot focused than A Brighter Summer Day. Like A Brighter Summer Day has its whole like gang stuff. It revolves around a pretty like action-based conflict.
Yeah, like somebody does something, then characters react to somebody doing something, that sort of thing.
Whereas this is all just like, it's just people living life for 3 hours, and it's beautiful, and it's like pure art, in my opinion. It fully understands like the aspect of art in humanity, which I really love. Just the art of living, and I think that's gorgeous. I adored this film.
I wish I vibed with it a little bit more. I think as much as I really appreciate like how much like mastery and like care and, you know, understanding went into its like screenplay and just general direction and performances, I think it's a really thoughtful movie. And I really like a lot of the conclusions it comes to about like the human condition and how we define ourselves around the art we consume, and, you know, how we define ourselves by the grief that we experience throughout our lives. But, like, I don't know, some of the threads I just didn't connect with as much, and all of them are so long that, like, I feel like that kind of kneecaps or handicaps my enjoyment of it a little bit. Yeah. But, like, it is really great. I would never say it wasn't great, at the very least.
No, absolutely, yeah. I get that, but I was entranced by what this was doing.
Yeah, I wish I had that, because, like, I think I was just so much more into some of the characters than others, just because I related to them a bit more.
Yeah.
And like whenever we'd cut back to another plot line, we'd get like a 20-minute sequence of them, like, you know, doing something, and I would be like, oh shoot, yeah, we still got like a ways to go here.
Yeah. Well, it made like, it's a very like, by all intents and purposes, like a slow kind of boring film. And I think I might have put it in my review that I almost fell asleep while watching it, but in like a good way.
Yeah, I get that.
But yeah, I loved it. I gave it a 5 out of 5.
I gave it a 4 out of 5. I thought it was great, but it's not quite. I think I even still would prefer Brighter Summer Day to it if it came right down, you know, to picking one.
I mean, I would agree. I would pick A Brighter Summer Day over this, but what can you do? But then after that, I left. I left the country, so our watches together has split. So we'll try and be a bit more brief on these that we've watched just by ourselves, because it's a little less interesting to talk about just one after another. And I have to get to bed soon. So
yes, the time difference is closing in on us, I think.
Yeah, for sure. But if you want to start off, go with what you watched on the 24th.
Sure. I was like, Micah's finally gone. Thank goodness. Now I can finally turn on Mamma Mia.
Yeah, I've been holding him back.
Yeah, I was like, I can never watch Mamma Mia when Micah's around.
I'm a big anti-Mamma Mia.
Bring the anti-Mamma Mia energy to the podcast. But yeah, I watched Mamma Mia for the very first time. I was really excited for it. I am a big ABBA fan just in general, and I like Amanda Seyfried a lot. She's really great, I think. And I really had fun with the movie too. I sat down and watched it with my mom. I got to see a bunch of really attractive people sing ABBA for a couple hours while in green screen Greece. So that was pretty cool, I think.
That's literally like that's the entire appeal of the movie, I think.
Yeah, I was about to say, you have like very hot people singing some of the best produced pop songs of all time in like a very, very beautiful location. So I liked it. I thought you know, as silly and, kind of, I don't know, camp seems like a kind of cliche and almost meaningless word at this point, but camp is a good way to describe Mamma Mia. It's very fun to me anyways. I could totally see not vibing with it because like some of the singing is kind of bad and it's kind of weirdly paced and like the whole thing is kind of flimsy and weird, but it's really fun and it kind of reminds me of the one Bollywood adjacent musical I've seen, RRR, in the fact that it feels more like a cinematic celebration than any other American movie I've seen, especially American musicals.
Yeah.
It feels like a party, I loved it.
No, that seems to
I
be
gave
the
it a
vibe.
4 out of 5.
Nice. On the 24th, I was on a plane. I was also on a plane for the 25th as well. So
Nirvana reference on a plane.
I could not sleep on the plane. I slept for like an hour on the plane, and I was in a plane for like 11 hours. So I watched some movies. They had in-flight entertainment.
I was shocked at how many movies you watched. When I saw you logging them, I was like, whoa, what?
Yeah, so on the 24th, I watched BLACKBERRY because it was on their list of movies that they had, and I had been wanting to watch that for a while, but it hadn't really like ever popped up as being on anything to watch, and I really liked it. I think it's really great. It's doing something really unique for like a biopic like this. Like, I don't know. A lot of these kind of biopics, even the more negative ones, like The Social Network, which you could more directly compare this to, are like a little bit more uplifting or say something a little bit different than what this is doing. This just feels unique. It chronicles a personal downfall of a character in a much more, I don't know, like almost understated way. Like when you're watching The Social Network, like that's the whole thing, is that Mark Zuckerberg is the worst. But in this movie, it kind of subtly happens, and you have to watch this downfall of this guy to becoming everything that he used to hate, and watching the rise and fall of BlackBerry in a really unique way. And the final scene of this movie, I was like, wow, that's really good.
You witnessed the rise of the BlackBerry, Micah.
Yeah, which I think it's funny that like I'm just old enough that like I was like, oh, we had that phone. We had the BlackBerry with the trackpad. Which
Micah was just sitting there silently on the plane, like pointing at his screen, like I know that.
Yeah, but it was really, really fun. I think it has some issues. It's not quite as solid in a lot of its character work as I would like, and it feels a little montagey at parts. But
that's honestly the vibe I've gotten from it. Like I think I've only seen one trailer for it, but like I'm like, this looks like a montage movie.
Yeah, but Matt Johnson, who did Nirvana the band The Show, he's one of the guys from that, directed and starred in this, which is really cool. And
yeah, I knew he looked familiar.
The guy who voices Hiccup from How to Train Your Dragon is one of the main characters, which was also fun. But I gave it a 4 out of 5.
The Glenn Howerton fan in me needs to see BlackBerry, I think.
Yeah, Glenn Howerton is really good in this. But yeah,
I'm a diehard Always Sunny guy. I need to see it.
On the 25th, I watched Casino, rewatched Casino, also on the plane. I fell asleep for like an hour of it, but I still logged it. This is when I slept.
Funny. That's such a cool movie to fall asleep to, actually.
Right. Great movie. Great movie to watch on a plane. Great movie to fall asleep to. Yeah. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. Also on the 25th, I watched Theater Camp, which was another relatively new movie that I had been meaning to get to for a bit.
Yeah, it released like the same time as like Past Lives and stuff, or a little after, I guess.
And it was like, it was sweet. It was cute. It's doing some cool things. Ben Platt is surprisingly not terrible. Molly Gordon, who directed or co-directed this movie, was really fun. And like it's sincere. It tries legitimately to capture like the young theater vibe. but it does it in a way that almost leans on parody with how sincere it is. And it's just so little. There's so little there. It really kind of bugs me. This way more so, like I know I just said, oh, Blackberry's like a montage film. This film is just a montage. Like all it can do, like it's in a mockumentary style, so it's not like stylistically a montage, but that's how the writing almost is done. It's just like scene after scene of things getting resolved off screen.
That's a bit disappointing.
Yeah, that's like most of the movie, and it also doesn't really stick very true to its mockumentary style. Like there are scenes that make no sense to be in the mockumentary style, and scenes where they don't really take time to shoot it like a mockumentary.
Yeah, I was about to say, you have to, I don't know, maybe this is just a pet peeve of mine, but I feel like you have to be very intentional if you're going to use a mockumentary framing, like have some sort of in-universe internal logic, like this is the kind of crew they have, this is the style they're going for, you know? Like that sort of thing.
But it was fine. It was whatever. It was like, it's sincere. It truly is. And
that's good.
You know, what else can you do? The songs were fun. I gave it a 3 out of 5. Also on the 25th, the night that I got to the school that I'm at, several people were sitting down for a movie night where somebody was pulling up a musical that they grew up on, and they had a Spanish copy of Seven Brides for Seven Brothers.
That's funny.
Luckily, the film itself was still in English.
Yeah.
But I hadn't seen this since my grandma showed this to me when we were super young. And
didn't the disc like kind of blop out halfway through, and we never finished the movie?
We never finished it. Yeah, so I finally got to see the end of the movie, which is not good and really concerning. We missed the most like troubling part of the movie, where they go on an entire thing where they just kidnap the seven brides. Like they actively, there's a big comedy montage of them breaking into their houses and kidnapping them.
No way,
and taking them away to their cabin in the frost where nobody can get to them.
It's actually the plot of a horror movie, but they decided to sing halfway through.
It's so baffling. Obviously, like the relationship dynamics and politics of the film are abysmal, but it is kind of fun.
It's kind of that's kind of implied with most mid-50s musicals that touch on like gender politics at all.
Right. It's got that kind of crisp glow of a 50s, like, I don't know, golden age of musical kind of musical, and the leads are fine, but man, these characters suck. They're terrible people. I gave it a 2.5 out of 5.
I don't feel bad for not finishing it anymore.
But here, now back to you, Ravi.
Yeah, I get to talk. Haha. On the 26th, I went out to the theater with my parents and watched Godzilla -1 minus color, which is pretty cool. I found out about it by just opening up the AMC app and being like, why does it say minus color afterwards?
I miss
but
AMC.
It's a black and white cut of Godzilla -1, unchanged. Other than that, I think they literally just desaturated it and adjusted like the contrast on the shots a little bit.
Yeah.
But it looks phenomenal. Like, if I didn't give -1 enough praise the last time I talked about it, or in our like year wrapped thing, it really is like one of the best action movies to come out. I honestly think it's better than like the most recent Mission Impossible entry, which is saying something, because I think that's a great movie.
Yeah.
But I watched it on a laser projector. It was black and white. It looked amazing. The sound system wasn't awful this time. The theater I watched it in the first time, like the high end was like completely blown out. So like people would be talking and it would sound like they're like screaming into cellophane or something.
Oof.
So yeah, it was really nice seeing it with like the correct audio, and I love the way black and white like accentuates performances. Like this is something I talked about, I think, when we had first watched Parasite in black and white.
Yeah.
It exemplifies or like makes the motion and emotion of the film a little more pronounced to me anyway, depending on how you shoot the movie, obviously.
Yeah.
But it was scarier to me on this watch. It was more emotionally involving to me on this watch. And I was literally like tearing up scene 1. So Godzilla has it, like literally any Godzilla movie I think I've cried like once watching.
Oh my gosh.
I love this like lizard guy so much. He's great. But yeah, I gave it a 5 out of 5 this time. Just phenomenal. Please go watch it, Micah, when you can.
Yeah, when I can. It's not playing over here.
I know. Later that day, I watched Autumn Sonata, or should I say rewatched Autumn Sonata. This was my 3rd or 4th viewing, I think.
Great movie.
And it's still really good. I forgot how great it looked. I forgot just like how amazing the color and like composition of every shot is. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. I'm so used to seeing Bergman work in black and white. Like Wild Strawberries was the last film I watched of his.
Yeah.
And yeah, seeing any of that era, like the transition from black and white to color, like any great director from that era, seeing their transition into color is usually pretty astounding. And this is no exception. I think this movie looks phenomenal. It's got a great script. It's got great performances. We've talked about it a couple times on here, at least.
Yeah.
And it's really amazing. Please go watch Autumn Sonata if you're up for it. I give it a 4 out of 5. And then to follow it up with maybe a strange inclusion, but I watched SHREK right after that. My mom was doing a cinematic scavenger hunt of sorts, and needed I don't even remember what criteria it was for, but she was like, "What about SHREK?" I think it was unconventional romance.
She was looking for unconventional romance.
Yeah, she was looking for an unconventional romance movie, and this is essential millennial unconventional romance, honestly.
It's true, but we have talked about it on the podcast before. Go listen to our episode.
we did a whole series on SHREK. I forgot about that, but yeah, it's still pretty great. I like it a lot. And then on the 27th, you watched something.
Yeah, on the 27th, I watched Pearl. It was on Netflix here in Belgium, and I figured I'd give it a go. I still have not seen X, which is kind of weird, I guess, to have watched this without seeing X.
Yeah, I don't know what the crossover is, you know?
Yeah, they feel like they wouldn't be that related to me, but like, I feel like having not watched X, it points out more of the actual problems of this film, because I think a lot of the themes and everything that it's doing like are leaning way too hard on X. It's ultimately just a fine movie. It's like fun. Mia Goth's performance is fun. There are some fun moments. I like how bright and colorful it is. I like its like sequences, but like especially its themes around specifically like sex and everything, which carries over from X. It seems very out of place. It doesn't feel like the film really has anything to say about anything like that. And it's just kind of like, because it's a prequel to X. It's a prequel to X. Like, it doesn't effectively have that much to do with Pearl's character, which I thought was odd. And it's ultimately just not that scary. There's a lot of moments where I was just like, huh. Like, I know it's supposed to be a slow burn movie, but it never had its Texas Chainsaw Massacre moment, where then it just goes to absolute chaos. It just is kind of, it slow burns literally until the credits roll.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see Pearl and X. I think I'm going to try and watch X first, and if I vibe with it, I'm going to give Pearl a shot, because I really love everything I've seen visually from Pearl, at the very least.
Yeah, it looks great.
Yeah. So I'm excited to see it at some point.
Yeah, the costuming, editing, there's like one sequence where the editing gets super crazy, and I'm like, oh, look, they're like doing something. But it was like only for one scene. It's not bad by any means, but like there are moments where such a better film shines through here. And I wish we had that film.
That's crushing, man. There's nothing quite like seeing, especially for like modern movies, like where it starts to touch on something really unique and then just kind of ends up like falling back into sort of a mundaneness, stylistically.
I think part of that is because it's a prequel to X. So
yeah,
I gave it a 3.5 out of 5.
Very cool. On the 28th, I sat down and watched a mockumentary, which was pretty cool. I watched POPSTAR Never Stop, Never Stopping for the very first time, which a friend of the podcast, Luke, has been talking my ear off, let me tell you, for the past, I think, like 3 months to get me to watch POPSTAR. And I mean, I was excited to see it anyway.
Yeah.
And it's a blast. Like I know a lot of people think it's kind of like dry. I think like almost to its detriment. Like it's just kind of a weirdly flat experience, which I understand that. Like it's a very simple movie,
Yeah.
but I think comedically it's pretty sharp. Like I think it about 70% of the jokes are like absolutely hilarious, and like the rest of them kind of range from like good to fine. Um and it's a blast. Like I love the music. Like I did not expect the music to be as good as it was for,
Yeah.
pop star. But the Lonely Island's whole thing is like musical comedy songs, so it makes sense. But yeah, it was great. I wish the mockumentary stuff felt a little more intentional. It feels, I don't know, like it is to a degree parodying like music production documentaries, like, and it
Yeah.
does that pretty well on like broad stroke stuff, but like moment to moment it feels a little superfluous, like to the actual movie, what's going on.
Yeah.
But it keeps the pacing up pretty well. I love the performances of it. I like just so many of the running gags. And I really admire how sincere the movie is. That's the big thing that I think will keep people coming back to it. Is like there's the central like trio, their whole arc together is really like it's really sweet and really sincere, and
Yeah.
it feels like that's what the whole movie was built around, like how much these guys love making stuff together.
Well, that's
And
cool.
I don't know. Yeah, it's really sweet and like probably one of my favorite comedies from the 2010s, easily. It's really inventive, it's really poppy, it's fun, and I like Andy Samberg a lot. So
Well, what did you rate it, Remy?
I gave it a 4 out of 5. I thought it was great.
Nice. On the 28th, I watched, or rather rewatched for like the millionth time.
For the bajillionth time, dude.
Right. I rewatched Bolt the Super Dog. Really just Bolt. And this was my first movie watched with Haley over Discord and everything. We watched this together, which was
Hey.
interesting, and we had a lot of fun with it. I really don't have too much to add about Bolt, but one really funny thing is that when you're in Europe, it might be called, it'll be called Bolt, but for some reason, well, I'll explain the reason. It always comes up as Volt.
Really?
So like he's Volt the super dog in the European version, because in Russian apparently Bolt is slang, so
Oh no.
they changed it to Volt in specifically the French and Russian versions, but that's
Yeah.
also the version we had here in Belgium. So like his his collar would just always say Volt. When it
That's
pops up the title
funny.
cards, it says Volt. But then sometimes it was really inconsistent about it. Like you'd be in one scene and there would be two Bolt posters in the background, and one of them
Yeah.
would have been changed to say Volt, and one of them had been changed or left the same and just said Bolt.
They have like a certain threshold that it's okay.
Right. I thought it was very funny. But yeah, I had a lot of fun. I gave it a 4 out of 5.
Nice, nice. Later that day, I watched a little TV documentary called The Real Inglorious Bastards, which is about like the group of people that both movies are based off of. And it was really boring.
Dang.
It's a really boring and like kind of poorly made documentary about a pretty interesting subject, if I'm being frank.
Right? No, honestly.
Like they even have interviews with like the soldiers, like they're still alive, or at least they were in
Wow.
2012 when they shot this.
Yeah.
And like that could have been cool, but I don't know what they were thinking. They just asked them the most like cookie cutter questions and don't seem to have any perspective to bring to the table other than like, look at that. Like, that was kind of cool that happened, right? Like that was kind of cool.
Guys. Quentin Tarantino made a movie.
They got the oldest guys on Zoom and we're like, dude, so tell me about that one military mission you guys went on.
Remember and that Quentin Tarantino movie? You guys were in that, right?
I really need to watch the Tarantino movie and like the older one too. Yeah. Now, I feel like because this is not the plot. Like this is not what the impression I got of what the like Tarantino movie would be like in plot.
Yeah, I don't think the Tarantino movie stays very true to their actual story.
Yeah, because it's like these two guys like land in, I believe, a Russian city, or no, an Italian city, and they like slowly liberate the town, like bit by bit. But like a majority of the stuff they describe is just them like running messages back and forth.
Yeah, like the Tarantino movie is like them impersonating Italians to go to a premiere of a Nazi propaganda film where they will then assassinate Hitler.
Yeah, like they go over their training that they had. Like they went through like this whole boot camp to like, you know, like kill Nazis. But like a majority of what they describe is like one of the guys gets like captured and tortured for a long time, but that's like the most that happens in the movie or in the documentary. Like that's the most they describe happening.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. Like, I don't know. It ends up being very boring despite how interesting of a topic it is. Like it's a very strange and like singular military operation during a very interesting war by all accounts. But yeah, kind of I was very disappointed in it as a documentary. I wish it was made with like, you know, a perspective or just, I don't know, something. It feels like the most cookie cutter TV documentary you could make about this topic. So. Yeah.
Well,
I was sad. I don't know. I didn't rate it. I would probably give it like a 2 or a 1. Oof. I don't know which.
Oof. Well, what did you watch next?
After that, on the 29th, I watched Cinema Paradiso for the first time. And it was really, really good. Who would have thought it?
Nice.
I feel like if you have a Letterboxd account, you pretty much are going to like Cinema Paradiso, right? Like that's.
I still have to watch it. I gotta get around to it.
Like I think you'll definitely like it more so than I will. But like I don't know, it's very sentimental. It's very much. I didn't realize that it would like sprawl a dude's entire life. Like the boy is like 5 years old and it ends with him being like 80 something.
Wow.
So it's like a guy's entire life. And I don't know, it's structured in a very like functional way to like make the emotional through lines work really well. And like I think the ending is really phenomenal and the sentimentality of it is really endearing. And like obviously it's kind of a small town movie in a lot of ways. So you get like a lot of just like broken off subplots with different characters in the town.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I think it's really good. I would argue even great, but like it's just not 100% my bag. It kind of drags for me at times, but it's definitely worth watching for like the central friendship at the center of it, and you know its general perspective about art and, you know, self-actualization through art, which I feel like we've talked about already,
right.
Partially. But yeah, I don't know. It's really good. I really want to own a theater someday. That's really the biggest takeaway after watching Cinema Paradiso.
Yeah.
I gave it a 4 out of 5. I thought it was great.
Well, then also on the 29th, I watched Gone Girl for the first time, David Fincher. Which
keep watching Fincher stuff, Micah.
Yeah, this is one of the few. I think I've now seen 50% of Fincher's narrative feature films, which is cool.
You're becoming a Fincher head, Micah.
Unfortunately, I'm so embarrassed every time. I've given almost all of his films a 5. It's so embarrassing.
No, what I think, don't you have a Fincher ranking list?
Yes.
It's so embarrassing.
It's so embarrassing, but darn it, Gone Girl was really fantastic. I mean, if anything, Gone Girl is one of the most loved of his films.
Yeah, like everyone I know likes Gone Girl, regardless of if they like, like Fight Club or, any of like Seven, stuff like that.
And it's just it's such a great film from him. It really highlights his strong suit so well, kind of in the way that The Social Network does, but in a different direction here. The performances,
The Social Network so badly.
The performances here are really amazing. It ended up kind of reminding me in a weird way of like a really pulpy modern Phantom Thread, which is really unique. And I don't know, I had a blast with this. I loved its themes. I loved its topics. I think it's kind of funny that theoretically this could be like, I was watching this, I'm like, this seems kind of a little harmful for, like, if you used this, obviously I don't think it was the intention of the filmmakers to give the message of like, you shouldn't believe women when they say they've been like assaulted.
Oh no.
But that's like the entire thing of this movie, is that she's lying about it.
Yeah, it's like when we were watching that Simpsons episode earlier this year.
Yeah, exactly.
Where Homer is like accused of assaulting someone, and like the whole thing is like, oh, it's so bad, people are jumping to conclusions. It's like, okay, but like
I'm fully
that seems a little like irresponsible.
I'm fully an advocate of believe women when they say stuff like that. But again, I don't think that's what this movie was going for, but I thought that was kind of a funny element. But there's such a great mystery, such a great camp, such a great, again, like pulp is a great word for this. And these two leads have such an interesting dynamic. I just said interesting like 30 times. That is kind of the takeaway of this movie. And I think it feels surprisingly intimate. It's a very different style narrative for Fincher from what I've seen. And I don't know, I was blown away by it. Great film. I gave it a 5 out of 5.
Mike, like the best part about Gone Girl is that it's like a movie, like a movie, like a go to the theater film.
That's how like every Fincher movie, I can describe it as just like a movie, like a great movie. It's a movie's movie,
The Phantom Thread comparison is very interesting though. That makes me a lot more excited to watch it. I was already like, it seems like a lot more my era of Fincher, like the more modern the better I'm finding for him, especially with stuff like The Killer, which is like my favorite movie of his. But yeah, no, I'm excited to see it. Later on the 29th, I watched A Quiet Place Part 2.
Ooh.
And it had Cillian Murphy in it.
Hey, I like that guy.
Yeah. This movie is kind of interesting. I wasn't planning on watching it necessarily because I don't love the first movie in the series, which I am calling a series because apparently there's going to be a prequel and a sequel to this movie.
Oh boy, a whole universe, if you will.
Yeah, a whole quiet universe. But yeah, John Krasinski in this one, it seems like, he had his own style to a degree in the first movie, but it feels like he's just emulating Spielberg like that.
That's
in
funny.
This one, like hardcore. Like there's a sequence, like the movie opens on day one, like the aliens land on the planet, and there's like this whole sequence of people like getting killed and like they're running for the hills, that sort of thing.
Like, it's like War of the Worlds.
No, it's literally shot like War of the Worlds. Like you get all of these like tracking one shots and like gleaming lens flares and like wide angle lenses, and it just literally looks like a Spielberg movie. It's so funny.
Yeah, that's great.
No, it feels it just, and even like the way it's, the whole visual style of it feels completely ripped from Spielberg's filmography, but not necessarily in a bad way. Like it doesn't feel like that derivative. Like it still looks good, and I don't know. I think honestly its biggest downfall is just not being that interesting on a script level.
I feel like that's kind of a shame coming from that movie, because like John Krasinski's direction, like you mentioned, it wasn't like the strongest thing in the first one, but it felt like he was trying something.
Yeah,
and it feels kind of like a shame that he would just rely so heavily on somebody else's style for this.
I mean, and that's a little reductive, obviously. Like, I'm kind of saying that a bit as a joke. And, like, obviously Michael Bay's production influence is definitely felt on this. He's one of the producers for this movie. So that visual style, partially what I'm talking about, could also be applied to Bay's movies. It's just this has a bit more elegance to it, so I like to assign it to Spielberg a bit more, just because I'm more familiar with that. But, like, I don't know, the performances, like, the cast is still really good. Cillian Murphy, you know, for as kind of strange as his character is, like, I think he gives a fine performance in this. I don't know. I feel like I've spent too much time with The Last of Us, because that's what I compare every, like, post-apocalypse story to now.
Yeah.
And, like, I don't know. I just played The Last of Us Part 2 for the first time last year. And, like, it has so much to say about, like, communal, connections through terror, like in the midst of terror. And this is kind of touching on that. Like, this is, you know, obviously they're dealing with the grief of losing their dad at the end of the last movie. Spoilers for A Quiet Place. I'm so sorry.
You've ruined everything, Robbie.
But yeah, like, Cillian Murphy, like, kind of takes on, like, the father role, obviously. Like, that seems like a no-brainer, but, like, I don't know. It didn't connect with me very much on, like, the grief. Anything it had to say about grief just felt kind of cookie cutter, and just, I don't know. It doesn't have that much depth to it, but it is fun. Like, at the very least, I think it's more fun than the first movie is, like, to watch. It's a bit more action. It's a bit more of an action movie.
Comparing thematically to The Last of Us Part 2 is a pretty high bar as well.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think that's a really, like, thematically rich and well-written story, but I honestly would prefer Part 2 of A Quiet Place and The Last of Us to Part 1, so...
Hot takes, but correct ones.
Yeah, the alien stuff is interesting. There's still some, like, good sequences, and it's not really bad by any measure. It just kind of feels like it could have been stronger, or just dug a bit deeper in some spots. Yeah. Like, it feels very just thing happens. Like, it feels like an episode of TV almost.
Yeah.
But obviously written with a little more like, velocity than something like that might have.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I thought it was good. I would probably give it, like, a 3. I didn't rate it.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
What'd you watch next, though, Remy?
A good movie. A great movie. A fantastic movie. I watched Jacques Tati's Playtime, which this was his, I think, third to last movie. This is, like, in the later stages of his career. And I found out that at the time of its production, it was the most expensive French film ever made.
Wow.
Which is crazy, because the movie's about people, like, walking around and, like, standing in buildings and, like, just talking and stuff.
Hope he used that budget.
Dude, it is insane. Like, this movie is actually crazy. You need to watch it at some point. But it has Monsieur Hulot in it still. He plays more of a, like, peripheral role in this. Like, he's not the main character, like, in Mon Oncle or anything like that.
Yeah.
But, like, it's all about the isolation through modern infrastructure. Like, that's the entire thesis of the movie. And how it has forced us to connect in different ways than we used to be able to. I don't know. It's really interesting, because Tati's gone through all this trouble of, like, constructing these very meticulous sets. Like, that's why it costs so much. He built all of the sets for this movie. Yeah. And it's, like, all these, like, big office buildings, and, like, there's a nightclub that they constructed for this movie. It's crazy. Like... I don't know. It's a really ambient film. It was shot for 70 millimeter, and I didn't watch it in 70 millimeter. So I feel like I didn't really get the full experience, but I played it as loud as I could. I watched it on the biggest screen I could.
Yeah.
But it's shocking how well Tati's, like, entire cinematic thesis is shown in this movie. Like, it touches on the strange alienation of modern, like, apparatuses, like buildings and cars and roads and everything that kind of
separate us, and
that kind of, like, feel like they separate us in a very odd way, like in a very alienating way.
Yeah.
But it also is about, like, the joy of life and, like, finding time to still experience like pure connection with people in like those environments. Like there's an entire, I think it's like 40 minutes long. There's a night, like I mentioned, the nightclub. That's one sequence that goes on for 40 minutes straight, where you literally just stay in the nightclub the entire time, and there's like a bunch of running gags. It is a comedy, by the way.
Well, yeah, I figured from Jacques Tati.
Yeah, I was about to say Tati's a really great comedic filmmaker, and like there's just so many just like completely amazing bits, and it's just so inventive, and it's like the most maximalist version of a Tati film that I can imagine. So I am honestly kind of blown away that it exists. It's really phenomenal. So
yeah,
I give it a 5 out of 5. I could probably go on talking about it for forever, but
Yeah, well,
please go watch it.
Up next, I watched on the 31st of January, Malena, which is a very, very interesting film. It's actually directed by, how do you say his name? Giuseppe
Tornatore, I think.
Tornatore, probably.
Yeah, no, when I saw you log it, I was like, wait a minute. Yeah. I just watched Cinema Paradiso. What's going on here?
Yeah, same person. But this was suggested to me from my YouTube channel, actually, because I'm doing another 12-month movie ranked. I just put out a video on my channel, which you should go check out, where I had done a challenge, and then I was doing another one, and not only am I doing suggestions from my friends on like Twitter and such, but I was also going to do one including any YouTube comment suggestions. So hey, if you're listening to this, go over to my YouTube channel, which I have changed its name to just my name, so it's just Micah Grayway now.
Nice. You dig the rebrand.
The rebrand is in progress. But yeah, so go over there, watch it, comment a movie. But this was one of the movies that was suggested, which I feel they missed the point of me going on for like 10 minutes about how wild of a movie The Forbidden Door is to suggest to someone you don't know. Because they suggested to me a wild movie.
Oh no.
Malena is trying to do a lot, and it's one of the most unpleasant movie watching experiences I've ever had. It's such a
really
deeply, like, not inherently in a bad way. It's specifically talking about misogyny and objectification and kind of male gaze, but it's doing it in such a gross feeling, in your face.
I was about to say, does
really
it feel like
brutal.
Exploitative?
It kind of does, but it's so difficult. They made their point of view character in this story not Malena, who would be a really interesting character to follow. Unfortunately, she literally only gets 10 lines in the entire movie.
What?
What? And like, she's still a really great character, and even then I understand like why they would do that, what they were going for with that, and her performance is fantastic. But instead we follow this like 12-year-old kid who's hitting puberty for the first time, and who becomes obsessed with Malena, who is like, everybody in the town thinks she's just the most gorgeous person ever, and they treat her terribly because of it. There's some genuinely like really, really intense and serious topics that this touches on. But it does it in such a weird perspective from this annoying, stupid little kid. And in some ways, like, the town and everything are almost fantastical, like almost ridiculous, that it doesn't tonally match a lot of what they're going for. So I wrote like a crazy long review about this because I think there's just there's so much subtext to the film, what it's trying to say about fascism and about the objectification of women, especially in film, but also it's got like a weird coming of age message where it almost feels like it like celebrates the fact that this kid essentially stalked her and like obsessed over her and peeping tomed her multiple times, and like it's just this weird, uncomfortable experience that ultimately leaves me questioning like, why make it like this? Like, it's such a simple narrative of like, oh, sometimes like, again, fascism can lead to like mob mentalities over moral outrages and stuff like that, and that can destroy
Yeah.
people's lives and turn people into scapegoats for problems that they create. Um, and like that's interesting, and you could also comment on the way men objectify women and the way that like some women also treat women poorly because men objectify that like women, and it's got so
Yeah.
much going on, but I just don't understand why you choose to deliver it in this way.
Interesting. Yeah, because when you said, well, like when I realized it was the same director as Cinema Paradiso, and then like I read part of your review, and I'm like, what? Wait,
it's
what?
it's like fine. It's by all accounts a good movie, but at the same time it's really rough to get through. And honestly, I feel like I would feel a lot better about it if it was even like directed by a woman instead of a man, or if
Yeah,
Melina was the
yeah.
point of view character. But just all of these things combined make it a super divisive movie, both between men and women. That's one of the things I looked out for in reviews, like how many of these positive and negative reviews are written by women. And like it's a pretty even split. So like it
Yeah.
literally just depends how you view it. But ultimately, Lola, the 81 version by Rainer Werner Fassbinder, is doing so much similar and is so much better that I would just say watch that instead. It's
That's
much more
funny.
palatable. Also talking about fascism and the way it relates to moral panics about objectification of women.
I wonder if I wonder if all of this guy's movies are about fascism, because Cinema Paradiso is about like religion and fascism and art. Like those are the main three things it talks about over
Well,
the course of the movie.
I'm assuming he like it's like a Miyazaki situation, you know, when you're growing
Yeah.
up in the aftermath of World War II and you were
Yeah.
from Italy, fascism is going to be a big thing.
Exactly. Yeah. I feel like it's
Uh,
kind of unavoidable at that point.
yeah, I gave it a 3 out of 5. I didn't give it a like because I honestly don't want to watch it again, but it's such an interesting movie. I wouldn't suggest it, but it's
Yeah.
doing something.
On the 31st, I watched Embrace of the Serpent for the very first time, and I I don't really know how I feel about it. Some people are like super into what it's doing. Some people are like, this is weird, and I don't want to be here. I don't know. I I like a lot of its ideas that it has. Like its thesis as a movie is kind of interesting, and it feels like the filmmakers had the best intentions
Yeah.
um with what they're trying to do, because this could so easily dip into some weird like strange exploitation like exploitative kind of movie
Yeah.
with what it's based around. But like I don't know, it seems like they took a lot of care and like worked very closely with all of the people like people groups that it's about. So like I really admire that. Like it seems like their heart was in the right place, but I really don't understand a lot of the appeal, like dramatic appeal of the movie.
Yeah.
Like for a majority of it. Like I think the last 20 minutes are really interesting. It has a lot to say about, you know, obviously colonization bad, like no duh, but like the slow loss of spiritual connectivity in the world, like
Yeah.
how it's like slowly been choked out by colonialism and you know other factors as well obviously, but like I don't know, it doesn't really seem to come to any sort of meaningful conclusion until the last little bit of the movie, which is really cool. Like I like it a lot, but like I don't know, a lot of it just seems kind of pointless at the end of the day. It's touching on organized religion and like the clear bad things that went on during the historic time this takes place in. I don't know. It's a very I feel like I'm not the right person to to talk about it in any sort of depth.
Yeah.
But I do admire its last little bit. I like in general its thesis. So yeah, it's neat. I would not watch it again, but
Mm.
I don't know. I think it's worth one watch, you know, if it
Yeah.
interests you at all.
I was going to say I wanted to check it out for sure.
Yeah.
If you were to rate it, what do you think you'd rate it?
Oh, right, I forgot. Probably a 3, I guess. I don't
Yeah.
know. It cuz like it's not bad. It's not. but it's just not my bag at all. Like, it's just not my thing.
Well, real quick, I have 2 more movies and then we'll be finished up.
Yep.
So I have on the 1st of February, I watched Avatar: The Way of Water. I watched this with Haley. She had not seen this, and
Heck yeah, dude.
I actually started it. I put it as logged on the 1st, but we watched this over 3 days, unfortunately.
Whoa, I did not know that. That's funny.
Time things came up where I didn't have time and she didn't have time, so we ended up having to split this between 3 days. But it's such a good movie. I almost wanted to up it to a 5 on this watch, just because, like, each watch, I'm just like, this is great. This is so good. Like, all the problems that I have with it just fade away with each watch. But I believe we did an episode on this. So go check that out. I'm pretty sure we did an episode on it, right?
Yeah, we did a Way of Water episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, and then on the 4th, I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. Then on February 4th... It would be
so crazy if, like, we didn't. It's just...
Well, I know we did one on the first movie.
Yeah. No, we did. Yeah, no, I remember making the thumbnail for The Way of Water. We had to.
But on February 4th, I watched Nimona for the first time, which had been a movie I'd been meaning to get around to for a while, and it was really good. I really liked it. It's not, like, the greatest thing in the world. I would say, honestly, it has a lot of similar problems to the recent Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. It has some of the same, like, kind of weird writing points and, like, that kind of thing where characters will just pop to where they need to be and seemingly like, it doesn't work fully on a visual level or even, like, a story level. It feels like they wrote each scene of where the characters needed to be, and then we're just like, yeah, whatever. It doesn't really have to make sense. But really, where the standout of this is, of course, the characters and the themes that it's touching on. It's a very, it's a very LGBTQ movie, which it was almost shut down for that because this was originally a Disney, like, it was owned by a company that Disney owned, I believe, Blue Sky, actually? Was it Blue Sky? I don't think it was Blue Sky. It might have just
been a 20th Century thing.
It might have just been a Fox thing. But anyway, they were going to shut down the film.
I'm not familiar enough with it to know.
But then Netflix ended up getting the rights to it and put it out. And, like, both it touching on those themes and the way it touches on those themes is really interesting and I think important as a film. Especially Nimona herself is a really interesting character. And again, like, kind of similar to Across the Spider-Verse in a weird way, a really good, like, trans allegory. And then, like, the character, it's just such good character work. The two of them are so much fun to watch. There's a lot of really good, like, comedy moments in there, and just the setting and everything about it works super well. I'm not the biggest fan of how the animation itself looks. It's just, I don't know, it's not the greatest looking thing to me. But, like, Ballister is such a good character. And I cried at the movie. I cried. I don't know, it feels really sincere, really special, really sweet. It's not doing anything groundbreaking on a cinematic level, but I'm really happy that it just exists, especially being that it almost didn't.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Film.
One of my friends, in their review, I don't know if you follow them, but Screening Notes wrote a pretty lengthy review about this movie. And they were talking about how much they admire, like, a lot of the like thematic stuff about it, like how rich it is.
For
in spite of its, like, weird kids movie trappings at times.
Yeah, I was about to say this, like, in spite almost of, like, its weird structure and pacing, it like, its characters are so rich, and it thematically does, like, kind of a question the establishment, almost like anarchy style film way better than most, like, non-kids movies I've ever seen do that, which is really impressive.
No, I'm really looking forward to it. It's pretty high up on my priority for, like, Oscar nominee watches. So I'm planning on seeing it pretty soon.
And at the end of the day, it's just a really fun, flashy, goofy kids movie, and I appreciate that. It's great. I gave it a 4 out of 5.
Very cool.
And that is what we watched. Isn't that
we
crazy?
kind of said it at the same time.
Close. But then again, we have so much delay. Who knows if we did or
I know.
not.
I was about to say, this is all relative. I don't know.
But thank you guys for listening. Hopefully we'll be able to do somewhat of a consistent episode basis. I doubt we'll do every week.
No, yeah, I don't think that's achievable.
Yeah, I doubt it. But I would like to do episodes on like specific movies going forward for the season.
Yeah.
While I'm abroad. Hopefully this is still listenable. We're probably not as, again, cohesive.
I was about to say, it's probably going to take us a couple of episodes to get a good rhythm going on which one of us is speaking, you know?
Right. But hopefully you guys will still enjoy this. Thank you guys for sticking with the podcast.
Yeah, congratulations to us, I suppose, on the beginning of season 6.
Yeah.
If you're tuning
6.
in, thanks for listening.
2024, baby.
Yeah.
And we will catch you guys later.
Goodbye.
Bye.